Hey kids, welcome to our little Grizzo TV.
Once upon a time in a faraway land, there was a kind and beautiful girl named Cinderella. She lived in a lovely house with her father, who loved her very much. Sadly, Cinderella's mother had passed away when she was very young. After some years, her father married a new woman, hoping Cinderella would have a mother again. But Cinderella's stepmother was a cruel and unkind woman. Cinderella's stepmother had two daughters from her first marriage. Their names were Anastasia and Drizella. They were mean and selfish girls who were jealous of Cinderella's beauty and kindness. After Cinderella's father passed away, her stepmother showed her true colors. She made Cinderella do all the housework. Cinderella cleaned, cooked, and washed clothes from morning till night. She was treated more like a servant than a family member. One day, a royal messenger came to the village with exciting news. The king was having a grand ball at the palace, and all the young ladies in the kingdom were invited. The prince, who was the king's son, was looking for a bride, and the king hoped he would find a suitable wife at the ball. When Cinderella's stepmother and stepsisters heard about the ball, they were thrilled. They immediately started planning what to wear. They wanted to look their best to impress the prince. When Cinderella asked her stepmother if she could go, her stepmother laughed at her. Finally, when the stepsisters and stepmother left for the ball, Cinderella sat down by the fireplace and began to cry. She felt so sad that she wouldn't be able to go to the ball and experience the magic. As she cried, a gentle voice spoke to her. "Why are you crying, dear?" it asked. Cinderella looked up and saw a kind old woman standing before her. She had a warm smile and twinkling eyes. "Who are you?" Cinderella asked, wiping her tears. "I am your fairy godmother," the woman replied. "I have come to help you." Cinderella was surprised but happy. "Help me?" she asked. "Yes," said the fairy godmother. "You deserve to go to the ball. Now let's see what we can do." The fairy godmother waved her wand, and suddenly a pumpkin from the garden turned into a sparkling golden carriage. The mice in the house transformed into horses, and the old horse became a handsome coachman. The fairy godmother then turned to Cinderella. With another wave of her wand, Cinderella's ragged clothes changed into a beautiful gown made of silk and satin, shimmering with diamonds. Her worn-out shoes turned into delicate glass slippers. Cinderella couldn't believe her eyes. She looked like a princess. "Oh, thank you, fairy godmother," she cried. "I have never seen anything so beautiful." The fairy godmother smiled. "You deserve this, my dear. But remember, this magic will only last until midnight. At the stroke of 12, everything will return to what it was before. So you must leave the ball before midnight." Cinderella promised she would. She climbed into the carriage and waved goodbye to her fairy godmother as the horses took her to the palace. When Cinderella arrived at the palace, everyone turned to look at her. She was so beautiful that they thought she must be a princess from a faraway land. Even her stepmother and stepsisters didn't recognize her. The prince saw her from across the room and immediately walked over to her. "Would you like to dance?" he asked, bowing politely. Cinderella smiled and took his hand. They danced and danced, and the prince couldn't take his eyes off her. He found her to be not only beautiful, but kind and graceful too. They talked and laughed, and Cinderella was having such a wonderful time that she forgot all about the time. As she danced with the prince, Cinderella noticed the clock starting to strike midnight. She remembered the fairy godmother's warning and panicked. "I must go," she exclaimed, pulling away from the prince. "Wait, please don't go," the prince called after her. But Cinderella ran as fast as she could. As she hurried down the palace steps, one of her glass slippers slipped off her foot. She didn't stop to pick it up. She had to leave before the magic ended. Cinderella ran all the way home, just as the clock finished striking 12. Her beautiful gown turned back into her ragged clothes, and the golden carriage became a pumpkin again. The horses were once more mice, and the coachman was the old horse. Cinderella sat down by the fireplace, breathless but happy. She had gone to the ball and danced with the prince. It was like a dream come true. The next day, the whole kingdom was buzzing about the mystery princess who had disappeared from the ball. The prince was heartbroken. He wanted to find her again. He had fallen in love with her and wanted to marry her. He had only one clue: the glass slipper Cinderella had left behind. The prince announced that he would marry the girl whose foot fit the glass slipper. He and his servants went from house to house, trying the slipper on every young lady in the kingdom. Many girls tried to squeeze their feet into the tiny slipper, but it didn't fit any of them. At last, the prince came to Cinderella's house. Anastasia and Drizella were excited. They were sure one of them would be the prince's bride. They both tried on the slipper, but it was much too small for their feet. The prince sighed, feeling that he would never find the girl he was looking for. "Are there any other young ladies in this house?" he asked. "No," said the stepmother quickly. "Only my 2 daughters." Cinderella, who had been watching from the kitchen, stepped forward. "May I try?" she asked softly. The stepsisters laughed. "You? How could you be the one?" they sneered. But the prince noticed Cinderella and remembered how kind and gentle the mystery princess had been. He asked the servant to try the slipper on Cinderella's foot. It slipped on perfectly, like it had been made for her. "You are the one," the prince exclaimed, overjoyed. "Will you marry me?" Cinderella smiled and nodded. She took the other glass slipper from her pocket and put it on her other foot. Now everyone could see that she was the girl from the ball. Cinderella's stepmother and stepsisters were shocked. They had never thought Cinderella could be the girl the prince was looking for. They begged for her forgiveness, and because Cinderella had a kind heart, she forgave them. Cinderella and the prince were married in a grand ceremony, and the whole kingdom celebrated. Cinderella moved to the palace and lived happily ever after with her prince. She never had to do another chore again, but she always remembered to be kind and gentle to everyone, just as she had always been. And so, Cinderella and the prince lived happily ever after, proving that kindness and a good heart are the true keys to happiness.